What is the scariest thing you witnessed with your own eyes? Please like and subscribe to support us. When I was around 6, we were going to my grandparents' house. On the interstate, a woman seemed to fall out of a car in front of us. My dad had to swerve to avoid hitting her. That's all I saw with my own eyes. It turned out the woman's husband was trying to murder her and make it look like a suicide. The intention was for my dad to have run her over, but he has time to swerve. The husband had an accomplice behind us, but he couldn't hit her because of how my dad swerved. Some other good Samaritan stopped and gave the woman a ride to the hospital. The guy who gave her a ride and my dad were both called as witnesses at the trial. The husband and the accomplice were both convicted for conspiracy for attempted murder. Well, it wasn't me, but my friend noticed a vehicle in the parking lot at his work had been there a few days in the same spot. He walked up to it and found a man who blew his head off with a shotgun. Suicide note was on the dashboard. His work offered him counseling with a professional if he needed it, but he declined. He did tell me though months later he had a nightmare about it, but that was it, and he never really thought much about it after that. My dad smashing a man's leg bones with a tire iron, then other things. Backstory: my dad isn't a big man. 5'6", 140 pounds or so. But my dad grew up tough and mean as fuck. Joined a local biker gang after the Navy kicked him out. We lived in this tiny house on the east side of Cleveland, rented to us by this fucking sleazeball. My parents are young, had me at 16, I was 6 when the landlord broke into our house and was going through my mom's underwear drawer. He had a thing for her, and kept trying shit. My dad is working as a mechanic at the time and is on his way home. Dude's sitting there trying to come on to my mom. Dad walks in, sees the score. What commences is a Looney Tunes escape-style chase through the house, my dad wielding a tire iron over his head, silently closing in on this dude. Dude runs out of room, turns to fight, my dad gets him on the head first, then he blocks with his arm, bring his wrist. Guy falls down, dad just kept going to work on him, smashed his kneecap and the 2 shin bones. Would have killed him if mom didn't scream. Dad got felony assault in 3 years. His friends kept my mom safe from our landlord for that time, even paid our rent once in a while. I thank God my kids don't know that life. Dad's doing good now, out of the gang but still rides, he's mellowed in his 50s. Good grandpa honestly. Was home alone as a teenager, during an aggravated burglary. Heard something slamming into front door. Went to go open it. And realized I had locked the wire screen door. So it seemed odd they were knocking so hard directly onto the wooden door. Instead looked out the window and to the side to see a heavy man that I did not recognize. I yelled out, "What did he want?" No answer. Yelled a few more times, he stopped. Then started shoulder ramming the door. I panicked and went to grab the phone, and a kitchen knife. But halfway to the kitchen, I heard a huge crash at the back end of the house. Meanwhile the ramming was still happening at the front door. Heard someone scurrying through the back of the house swearing, panicking I didn't want to get caught in the middle of the house by 2 people. So decided to burst out through the front door and bowl over whoever was out there, knowing it was just one person, because I had seen him through the window. So that's what I did. Exploded out the front door, knocked the guy over and ran out into the street and to a neighbor's, and called the police. They were gone by the time the police arrived. Incidentally, they came back twice the next week, and again when I wasn't home. The neighbors told me. Ended up catching them, but definitely left a lasting fear in me. So I didn't witness the actual event, but the aftermath of it still haunts me. A while back I was an environmental technician for a huge industrial waste remediation company. We did a lot of work for the railroad companies. Every now and again we'd get a biohazard call for what they label as a trespasser strike. Usually it's an animal that has the misfortune to be passing by one of the speedliners. In this instance it was a person. At least that's what I was told. There was nothing left of them except blood, bone fragments, and goop that went for about a mile. Biggest problem was the rail lines were still electrified, so wherever their biomass hit the tracks it was fried on there. Think egg on a cast iron pan that never gets flipped and sits there for hours. I will always remember that smell. Even through my respirator. I worked in a kitchen for a couple summers, at a Cub Scout camp in the Midwest. I usually worked late nights, mainly watching the main building I was in, and watching over the people who had special needs, mainly in the form of people who took temperature-sensitive medication. I remember one night it was storming, and we were under a tornado watch. Protocol said we don't have to call the campers to the shelters unless a warning was issued, so to prevent unnecessary worry and concern, the counselor head gave me a radio and basically said, "Watch the radar. If a warning is issued, Let me know, and we'll wake everyone else up." Around midnight, I was pleasantly shaken by the sound of Tom from the National Weather Service report that our county was now under a tornado warning, so I radioed the head and through a lot of curse words, I heard him say, "I'll wake the others, you get the lights on." 5 minutes later, all staff are now awake, and splitting into teams to begin waking campers, while I was tracking the movement of a funnel cloud on my phone's radar app. In typical leader fashion, he told me, "Grab an air horn, get in a golf cart, and go out. I'll take over here." So I did. Just as I was leaving, the first people from one of the closest campsites arrived, and the worst possible fucking news was brought to us. Little Timmy Tiger Scout had gotten scared and disappeared into the forest. Both parents were still searching, and the rest of the cub pack was pretty worried, so the head turns to me and says, "Don't worry, we've got a staff member going over there right now," as he looks right at me. So I left, and began making my way down there in my golf cart. I found the parents, still looking for their kid, but no kid, so after telling the father to come with me and both the father and myself telling the mother to go back, the two of us left to continue the search on the trails. We ended up finding the little fucker near the climbing tower. He had hidden at the base, and was lying flat down, so I'll give him props for trying to be safe. Still, we got him on the cart, and just as I turned us around, like a scene from Twister, a bolt of lightning illuminated the sky just in time for all three of us to see this large, dark fucking funnel past the trees. Now because the trails that led back to the main building also led straight to God's finger, I turned us around and began driving towards a couple lodges that I knew were nearby. Next to the climbing tower was the High Adventures course, and about 500 feet past that was two lodges that were only ever used during the winter, so I drove us over there. We broke our way in, and sat there until the lights above us stopped shaking. Afterwards, our golf cart survived, so we used that to drive back, got into the main building, and as the family was reunited, I promptly told the head he could go fuck himself, got my shit together, and left in my truck that morning, the rain still falling, and the branches still all over the road. Hell hath no fury like Mother Nature. When I was 12, my family and I took a road trip to Florida, and as my mom was driving through Ocala, I saw a store with police tape around the gas pumps and a car with a limp body laying halfway out of the open driver's store door and a pool of blood on the ground in front of him. It looked like, and probably was, a murder scene, and nobody else in the car seemed to notice it. I never mentioned it to any of them, I just stayed quiet and tried to forget what I just saw. It still haunts me. More recently, I saw a man try to ride his bike through an automatic gate before it shut, and he didn't make it. He slammed into the gate, and one of the spikes impaled him through the neck. This was at one of my job sites, landscaping, Hoa condo complex, and my co-worker gave him a towel to hold over his gaping neck wound. The man was still conscious and standing. We called 911 and an ambulance took him to the hospital. About a week later, we were back at that location and the man approached me in good spirits. He was thankful that we helped him out, and I was glad to see he was okay. Apparently, the spike missed a major artery by a hair. Finally, when I was 9, my brother and I were walking around Daytona Beach with a friend, barefoot on beachside in the bad part of town. Our friend thought it would be a good idea to pick up a stick and poke a homeless man who was sleeping behind a hedgerow in a parking lot, and when the man didn't respond, he continued to poke him. Finally, the man had enough, grabbed a gun from under his sleeping bag and pointed it at us. He told us to get our asses away from his bush, and we ran like hell. In retrospect, it was more sad than scary, and we totally deserved the scare. He just wanted to be left alone, and good on him for having protection. I only learned years later how many homeless people are beaten to death by sick young punks. It was many years ago. I was driving Uber, heading home and the sun was coming up. There was a girl laying in the road, got out to check on her. She was passed out. I dragged her to the side of the road and could smell the booze, so I woke her up. She immediately tried to get up and run back into oncoming traffic saying she wanted to die and her friends were so mean. I held her down while she fought me screaming until the ambulance came. She was 15. The ambulance took her away. I hope she's okay and got help she needed. Thanksgiving Day 2010, I was 17, my parents woke me up without warning kind of early and my mom was sobbing. My dad tells me my 21-year-old sister had some sort of mental breakdown at college and that they were going to pick her up. She had been taken in by the state police. They found her wandering in some field off the highway totally incoherent, but she had managed to call 911. My dad only talked to me for a few minutes before they left and didn't return until much later. I'm not sure what was more messed up, Seeing her completely off her rocker and having to talk my only sibling down from escaping my parents' house, or all the stuff that could have happened to her. She was talking about having visions of God speaking to her directly and was talking about people who weren't real. It was traumatizing AF. I have so much respect for her to go back and finish her BA after something so life-altering. I also lost all respect for her classmates and friends that wouldn't help her and turned their backs on her after her episode. She ended up in the psych ward for almost 2 months and has struggled with her mental health ever since. She just went back into a psych ward yesterday for the first time in a few years, but I have hope she'll bounce back pretty fast this time. This whole ordeal and the things she's gone through have totally changed my view on mental health and the stigma with it. It has affected me so much that the horror novel I'm outlining is basically going to serve as a metaphor for the narrative of mental health over the past century and how we need be more receptive and address the way anyone with mental health issues is treated. Back in 2017 I saw a homeless man fall 50 feet crumpling to the ground, bones protruding from ankles. He survived. Crazy coincidence at the end. Worked security for 10 years, 4 of which was overnight at a convention center. Once around 2 a.m. I was on our cameras with another guy in the office on base. There were 2 others patrolling the building, and a supervisor. I saw on our cameras a homeless man go up an exterior elevator to our terrace level. Happens all the time, no big deal. I'm watching him hoping he's just crossing through. He then goes to a blind spot where others typically camp out for the night. I call my patrol guys to go and ask him to leave. They're on their way. I'm kicking back, joking with my co-worker. See my patrol units and my supervisor on camera approaching the area. Whatever. On the corner of my eye on another camera, directly below the blind spot I see a body drop, landing straight on their legs, crumpling to the ground. It was the homeless man. He just fell about 50 feet from our terrace to the street level directly outside our office. I'm yelling, "Oh shit! Oh shit!" My supervisor calls on the radio to call 911 but the base guy is already on it after seeing my reaction. I grab the first aid kit and run out the door. First on scene. He's laying face down, blood dripping from his mouth, hands broken, bones protruding from his ankles, but he's breathing. He manages to roll over and asks what happened. My supervisor comes running down the stairs along with the patrol guys. Supervisor said he saw him sitting on the ledge with the 50-foot drop right below him. Sup tells him, "Get down now." Must have scared him because he just lifts himself up and falls without saying a word. Ambulance shows up, throw him on a stretcher, and we woo him away. Cops come back a few hours later and give us his condition. His interior organs and important shit are all intact, expected to survive, and will most likely never walk again. Crazy coincidence, a week later I had a new roommate move in. He brought his girlfriend over and we're all chatting. I bring up that I worked security at the convention center. The girl asks if I saw a homeless man fall from our ledge. How the fuck does she know that? I saw the entire thing, she was definitely not there. Turns out she's the godmother of his children. He's been homeless for several months, in and out of jail, and gets into fights with cops pretty regularly.